This is the Berman Method podcast featuring Dr. Jake Berman and physician assistant Jenni Berman. We are here to treat problems and not symptoms. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and not to treat anyone or to give medical advice. If you are interested in any information that we are giving and would like to use this for yourself, we recommend that you contact your primary care physician or reach out to us and ask us questions about yourself specifically. Enjoy.
And we're back, the Berman Method podcast, where we are focusing on treating problems and not symptoms, right?
Right.
Dr. Jake Berman here with my lovely wife,
Jenni Berman, physician assistant.
And we are picking up from last week. This is part 2. So if you missed last week, you better go back and listen to it because
it was important.
It's very important. It's the intro to this week, essentially.
Yes.
So last week we talked a lot about stretching. Oh, the most controversial topic in my life, generally.
In your life?
In my life.
Wow.
Nothing else is more controversial than stretching in my whole entire life. Can you believe that?
That's crazy.
Isn't that insane?
It's pretty easy going, though.
Yeah.
If that's the most difficult thing you have to talk about.
So I started off last week saying that stretching is not good.
And not bad.
And not bad. It just is. And it just depends on the scale, right? So we want to be equal, flexible, and equal strength. So we used the scale 0 to 10 last week. 0 is no flexibility at all. You're stiff as a board. 10 out of 10 flexibility is your yogi. You can put yourself into a pretzel like Gumby. Same thing for strength. 0 out of 10 paralysis, essentially, and 10 out of 10 you're a bodybuilder. Mm-hmm. So when you look at somebody that does yoga 48 times a day, you can see that they're super flexible, 10 out of 10 flexibility, but they're not going to flip a car over like a bodybuilder, right?
Right.
So we'd give them a 5 out of 5 strength, 10 out of 10 flexibility.
5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. Yeah, sorry, 5 out of 10 strength. Mm-hmm. And then we look at a bodybuilder, you know, that guy that walks around the gym that can't put his arms down by his sides. They just naturally stick out to the side.
As I'm like shaking my body, walking like him. Mm-hmm.
And he is a 10 out of 10 strength because he could literally flip a car over. Super strong, but as far as flexibility goes,
2, 3.
I wasn't going to say that bad, but
maybe 5
at the best, right? Because he can't even scratch his own back, right? He just can't get his arm behind his back. So flexibility, 5 out of 10 flexibility, but 10 out of 10 strength. So you can see the two opposite ends of the extreme. And what we're looking for is a good balance between the two. If we could have a 7 out of 10 flexibility and a 7 out of 10 strength, the vast majority of non-traumatic injuries would not happen.
Right. So I was going to break you and say when we have that imbalance of strength and flexibility, that's what can lead to pain and injuries.
Correct. It's the number one cause, in my opinion, the number one cause of non-traumatic injuries. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I'm just getting old. No, you're getting weak.
You should listen to your own advice.
You're on a roll. You are on an absolute roll. So
I can't tell you how many times in the past 3 weeks we've said, man, we are getting old. And then, but we preach all the time, we're not getting old. Something's wrong here.
We're getting weak.
So then we had to refocus and say, what's getting weak here?
Exactly. So that's what we've been doing the past 3 weeks is saying, okay, why am I feeling this? Oh, I completely forgot to do one of these very fundamental exercises that I thought I was too good for and I didn't need to do anymore.
You know, the March Mobility Madness, I don't know if anyone, well, I hope everyone has joined, but we're doing a whole month of stretching, flexibility, strengthening tips, mobility tips so that you can be stronger at the end of March. So it's coming out via email every day. And that has been really helpful for me and you. Because as we were recording some of these exercises, man, we better get back to doing these more regularly like we used to. So it's been good for us too.
When are we going to pencil those in?
Well, we're doing a pretty good job. I am.
Have you been working on your hips?
Since the March Mobility Madness started, yes, because I realized when I was recording those videos that, man, my hips have gotten way too tight again. So I've been refocused on it.
Okay.
And that happens in life. We lose focus on certain things. And then, unfortunately, most of the time it's an injury or a pain that makes us refocus. But our job is to try to keep people focused.
Right.
And keeping ourselves focused on the important exercises.
Yes, it's a perfect example of this. The saying is true in every aspect of life. I've been using it a lot as far as business goes. The more and more I learn about business, one of my main mentors says this all the time. He goes, whatever gets your attention will get improved. So as you go through business, all aspects of business can't have all of your attention all of the time. So whatever you're focused on this week, this month, this quarter, that's what's going to get improved because it's getting your attention. Same thing is true with exercising. Like right now, I'm working on really getting a solid deadlift, right? So I'm just working on focusing on my form and having a really solid, strong deadlift because this month is the first time that I've lifted this much weight in 10 years. It's literally been 10 years since I've deadlifted 275 pounds, and I like it because it's not hurting. Like it feels good.
Right.
So I'm really focusing on it. However, what is that taking my attention away from? Mm-hmm. Right? Single leg stance mobility drills, for example, the RDLs.
Right.
Right. I just intentionally stopped doing RDLs because the deadlifts are taking so much of my time during my workouts that I'm not really focusing on the single legs. Mm-hmm. So then when I'm outside running with the dogs, which requires juking back and forth on one leg, and I feel a tweak, I'm like, oh.
Right.
It's because I quit doing that stuff.
Right. So then we have to refocus on it. So let's talk about a little bit more about that. How can we make sure we're doing the right types of exercises and strengths to reach that equal strength and exercise? There's a lot of different types of stretching, which we talked about. Passive stretching, which just means you're relaxed, the muscles are relaxed, and your stretching is not always the most optimal type of stretching for most of us. Whereas there's different types of stretching, like active stretching, eccentric, concentric. So we're going to talk, and those also include some strength terms there too. So I think talking about the different types of exercises or stretching that's going to be the most effective versus passive stretching.
I love that you ended with that. We're going to decide which ones are going to be the most effective. So we really need to talk about this because I am just as guilty as anybody else of this one, where we've got to find the one that is most effective right at this time, right at this moment. Mm-hmm. Because just because we find something that's really effective today, this week, this month, doesn't mean that it's going to be really effective 6 months from now, a year from now. So it's very, very important that everybody listening to this understands that you've got to change it up. You have to. And I'm just as guilty as the next person, where I'll go to the gym and there will be weeks where I do the same exact intensity, length of time, duration, intensity on my cardio machines. And like this morning, I got done with my 20 minutes of cardio and I was barely even sweating. I'm going, oh, I'm going to have to change that up on Wednesday or whenever I'm going back because we alternate days.
You didn't sweat?
I said I was barely sweating, so technically I was sweating.
So can we talk about one day on Sundays we're able to go to the gym together because they have childcare. We don't just leave our kid at home. So Sundays we bring her with us, and we happened to be on the Stairmaster at the same time one day, and I look over and Jake is legitimately doing half the speed on the Stairmaster as me. Half. So I just reached over and started pressing the up button, and he didn't exactly realize it at first until it started going faster. It was pretty hilarious. So were you going a level 8 on the Stairmaster so you weren't sweating?
I wasn't doing the Stairmaster this morning. Maybe that's part of the reason why I wasn't sweating.
All right. Anyways, so the point is muscular confusion is really important. Just like when it comes to our diet, we can't eat the same exact way every single day and expect the metabolism to continue to function at a high level and lose weight. Same thing with muscles. We have to do different exercises, different intensities, different durations, different types of exercise.
Correct. And that's very challenging because it takes us out of our comfort zone.
Right. So, okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about these different types
of eccentrics.
Well, let's start with passive, because last week we
Let's start there.
touched briefly on passive stretching, passive exercise.
Yep. So a lot of people think that stretching is essentially just being in a position and relaxing and letting the tissue lengthen. That is called a passive stretching, a passive stretch, where you're just essentially laying there and letting the tissues elongate as you're feeling the stretch. Now, I know that I'm going to get some pushback on this one, so I'm going to say it anyways, because bring it on, baby, bring it on. It is extremely rare for anybody to need to do a 100% passive stretch, at least with the 40 plus demographic. Definitely with the 60 plus demographic. The only one that I can really think of where I can say, yes, just stay in this position for 60 seconds up to 5 minutes even, and just really let it stretch, is when we're trying to avoid a hip replacement. That's really the only time that I can justify it and say, yeah, just be there in this passive position, because we've got to gain some range of motion back. Because if we don't gain the range of motion back, they're going to chop your hip off, or you're going to need to get a hip replacement.
Right.
So that's it. No more passive stretching. I can't justify passive stretching other than that. Right?
Majority of the time.
Majority of the time.
Yes. Okay. So instead, we tend to recommend something that we call dynamic stretching. So give us an example of a dynamic stretch. We did one with the hamstrings.
Yep. That was in one of those days for the March mobility thing. So let's do this, because everybody can imagine sitting on the ground with your legs straight, bending forward, trying to reach for your toes, trying to stretch your hamstrings. Everybody can imagine that stretch. It's one of the first stretches that you ever learn way back in grade school, back in PE. They don't even have PE anymore.
The sit and reach test.
Yeah, the sit and reach test. Yeah. So you're sitting on your butt, knees are straight, and you're reaching your fingertips towards your toes, trying to strengthen or lengthen the back of your hamstrings. That is a passive stretch. So what you can do to make it a dynamic stretch, or passive active, a combination, is reach for your toes for 5-10 seconds. And then hold that position, and then try to push the back of your knees, the back of your thighs into the ground. So you're activating the muscles that you're stretching passively. So you're switching from a passive stretch to an active state. So you just do that back and forth every 5-10 seconds, stretch for 5 or 10 seconds passively, then push the back of your thighs into the ground and hold that contraction for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So that's creating active or activity into the passive mobility. Does that make sense?
Right. So how I think about it when I'm sitting there with my legs out straight and I'm pushing my knees down to the ground to activate the quadriceps, which is the muscles on top, and the hamstrings underneath. And I'll actually take my hands and push off my legs. So I'm actually creating more force through my legs when I'm pushing them down to the ground. And then I'll relax and you're able to actually bend forward even a little bit more, creating more elongation of the muscles. So that's one. And RDL, we talked about RDLs. So that's another dynamic hamstring. You're stretching the hamstring, but you're also activating the hamstring to strengthen.
What the heck's an RDL?
Well, you talked about it already.
For the people that are listening.
I know, but okay. So the RDL is a Romanian deadlift is what it stands for. So you are basically standing on one leg, and this is hard to explain without words.
Just Google it. Watch a video on YouTube. And it's essentially an eccentric contraction of your hamstring where you're lengthening the hamstring and then contracting the hamstring and come back up against gravity. So that's a way to actively lengthen the hamstring without passively stretching the hamstring.
Yeah. Maybe we could add a video on the show notes of an RDL.
You want to do a video right now?
No, I'm sure I have 20 of them already on YouTube. So we'll put it on the show notes, a video of the RDL. But this is another exercise where we do them for strength of the hamstrings, but it's also actively stretching the hamstrings every time we go down and back up. So that's another good one.
Good.
Yeah. So let's talk about, because you mentioned eccentric, concentric. So what does that mean? What is eccentric versus concentric, and when is it better to do one versus the other?
So one clear way to look at it is if you're standing upright doing a bicep curl. So you've got some weight in your hand and you're just holding it straight out. Your elbows are at 90 degrees right now. So everybody can imagine standing up with a dumbbell in your hand, holding your elbow at 90 degrees. Your bicep is contracting because if your bicep was not contracting, then the dumbbell would drop down and your elbow would go from 90 degrees to 120 degrees or 180 degrees or whatever. So while you're holding your elbow at 90 degrees, your bicep is contracting. When you go to curl the dumbbell up towards your shoulder, so you're going from 90 degrees to 45 degrees at the elbow joint, that is a concentric contraction, meaning that you're contracting the muscle fibers and the muscle fibers are shortening. Mm-hmm. That's a concentric contraction of the muscle fibers.
So basically we're lifting the dumbbell up in our curl. We're curling up.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the same exact example in the opposite direction, your elbow's at 90 degrees, so the muscle's contracting, right? Mm-hmm. No fibers are lengthening or shortening, so it's just a contraction, right?
Holding it at 90.
Right?
Right.
And then you slowly let the dumbbell go down.
Towards the ground.
Towards the ground, so your elbow is going from 90 degrees to 120 degrees.
Right.
So the muscle fibers are still contracting, but the muscle fibers are now lengthening as they contract. That's called an eccentric contraction.
Right. And the idea when you do eccentric and concentric exercises, it's very slow.
When you're doing eccentric contraction or eccentric exercises, the idea is to go super slow.
Right.
Reason why you want to go super slow is because your muscles are able to withstand a higher load going eccentrically than they can concentrically.
Right. So lengthening versus contracting.
Yep. So that's one of the main reasons why you want to do a concentric or an eccentric contraction slowly, because there's more forces. You can withstand more forces, which can raise the potential for compensations, or I don't want to get too far into this thing. Mm-hmm.
But the point of this that we're explaining the difference between explaining eccentric is because you're elongating the muscle fibers while under contraction. One, you're strengthening them. So it's a great way to increase strength of muscles, and it's very controlled, but you're also actively stretching the muscles as well. So it's a good combination of getting strength and stretching at the same time.
Yes, that's a better way to say it.
That was the point of us talking about the eccentric.
Was the point.
And it is, for those of us who are looking to gain strength and to gain lean muscle mass, eccentric exercises are great because you can lift heavier and it is more controlled. So you're increasing the muscle fibers and gaining lean muscle mass. But for purposes of this podcast, it's also important for actively stretching the muscles.
Correct.
So we want to do a combination of exercises where we are focusing on just strength, but also including some exercises in each workout or in our day to where we're actively stretching those muscle fibers at the same time. So we're getting that equality of strength and flexibility.
Correct. Just make sure that everybody's still hearing her say actively stretching, not passively stretching.
So what about Pilates?
What about it?
Pilates is typically a combination of active stretching and strength, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if we go back to the origination of Pilates, Joseph Pilates, when he was a prisoner of war, POW, he was in a cell and he had no equipment. So the only way he could stay in shape and keep his mind from going crazy was he essentially invented Pilates. Mm-hmm. So he found a way to get a great workout in with no equipment at all. So it's essentially just a lot of holds and activations in different ranges that you currently have. So yeah, I guess so.
Which originated as body weight type exercise, but he did a lot of eccentric movements with body weight, which was creating an increase of muscle fibers and strengthening, but also actively stretching the muscles. And now Pilates has evolved to having the things like the reformer and these machines that have bands, which increases the weight more than just the body weight, which is good. But we also, I don't want to say only doing Pilates is best, because we also need to make sure we're including some cardiovascular strength and muscular endurance strength. But just to say, doing Pilates a couple times a week could be a good way to include some of that active stretching with strengthening.
Yeah. Again, it comes down to what is good and necessary for you today, this week, this quarter, doesn't necessarily mean that it's good and necessary for you in 6 months or a year from now. So you really do want to change things up. You don't want to get into this routine where the only thing you do is Pilates, the only thing you do is yoga, the only thing you do is strength training, which is my weakness, where I get into these ruts, I'll call it a rut, and say that the only thing I'm focusing on right now is strength training, and I'm not going as aggressively as I could on the cardio or the flexibility, mobility aspect. So we just want to make sure that we continue to change it up and just say, this is good this week, this month, this quarter, but let's set a reminder. 3 months from now, let's see, am I still doing the same thing or very similar today as I was 3 months ago? So that's why I started keeping track of my numbers in the gym. I just started this a couple of weeks ago and saying, how much weight am I lifting today? How many reps am I doing? What was the amount? How many meters did I row on the rower at minutes 3, minutes 4, minutes 5? And I have my PRs there. And then I also have what I did for that day. So I can always see the discrepancy between the two. So the next time I get on the damn thing, I'm like, I got to try a little bit harder because I did do better at one point in time. Why am I not doing better today?
Right. And, it's important, as we said, just like your meal plan, to be changing things up. So you may focus a month on muscular endurance, which means high reps, lower weight, and then focus a month on muscular strength, which is lower reps, higher weight. But doing that, constant change is really, really important.
Yeah, that's the main reason why, changing the diet up. It's the main reason why I eat so healthy during the week. And then on the weekends, I'll eat a whole pizza, ice cream, cookies, sandwiches, subs.
It's not recommended for active weight loss phase. Just side note, asterisk, fine print.
But I'm changing it up. I want to keep my body guessing, right?
Yeah, for somebody who exercises regularly and wants to maintain their weight, that might work. It might work.
Should see the looks that I'm getting right now.
Oh, yeah. Constant battle.
What else do you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
I think that's all. I think, going back to last week, stretching is not good. It's not bad. Our recommendation is that we are doing active stretching with eccentric exercises throughout your workout routine, daily, weekly, to make sure that you are getting both. We want to be as strong as we are flexible, and make sure you're changing it up. And if you have specific questions on your types of exercise or your strengthening program, reach out to us. I am a certified personal trainer. Our dietitian's also a certified personal trainer. We are doing personal training in our office between the two of us. And the physical therapists obviously are very well versed in the muscles as well. So if the CPTs don't know, the trainers don't know, then we communicate with the physical therapist to see what the best thing is for each person.
I think my biggest take-home message is from last week of this 2-week or this 2-part podcast, which is the biggest, most explicit sign that you have a weakness is feeling tightness.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
So that's what I want everybody to take away from these past 2 weeks is if you feel tightness, chances are you have a weakness. Not necessarily that you need to stretch.
Got it.
That's what I want people to take away from this.
Got it.
You like that one?
Go do your butt squeezes.
Squeeze the butt.
Got it.
Good?
Yeah, great.
All right. That was fun. I hope somebody wants to try to shoot some holes in this. I'd love to have a conversation with somebody that says, no, you're absolutely wrong. Passive stretching is the way to go. Bring it on. Let's do it. I am all about it. If not, I hope you guys took some quality stuff away from this. If you feel tightness, it's the number one sign that you have a weakness somewhere. Not necessarily where you feel the tightness. It's usually somewhere else. Okay?
All right, cool.
Cool. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Ciao for now. Thank you for subscribing on your social media and podcast platforms to the Berman Method. Dr. Jake Berman with Berman Physical Therapy and Jenni Berman, Physician Assistant with Berman Health and Wellness. You can find more information on our website, www.bermanpt.com for physical therapy, bermanpt.com/wellness for the health and wellness. You can also find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and on your podcast platform. So be sure to follow us, like us, subscribe to us. And if you would like any further information, definitely visit our website and reach out to us. You may also find our free reports on the websites as well, where you can download this free information for yourself. Have a great day.